Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. We're back in the pub, me, Chris and Pat, to answer your burning questions. The first of which was sent in by Manu Hef, and they say, which team has gone under the radar for different reasons at the start of the 1920 season, which I think is a terrible question. Boring, doesn't make sense. Obviously the likes of Palace and Burnley are in there, but I'll be honest, they're going to drop away at some stage.
Awful bloke. You leave Manu Hefalum
alone. If you think it's a good question, then fair enough, but I don't. So I think we should pivot and talk about players. Which players have gone under the radar? Because there are some fairly good shouts that I've seen noted down in some of the suggestions here. The likes of Callum Wilson, immediately springing to mind, given that he is flying at Bournemouth and I'm seeing linked with all of the top clubs for January moves. Do you think he could make that step?
Including Manchester United.
Let's leave
My
that
only
alone.
concerns about him going to a different club in January, a bigger club, is that said bigger club wouldn't be willing to pay the fee it would probably take to prize him away from Bournemouth. I do think he's probably found his level at Bournemouth. They've got a very productive front three who are all better playing together, aren't they? As demonstrated last season, he's got a really good relationship with Josh King as well. Yeah. So maybe he's good as is at the moment, but not an awful lot of shots is one thing I have noted down about Callum Wilson. So 1.9, so he's not a huge shot taker, which doesn't bode very well if you want to make your mark at a bigger club, because elite strikers tend to find great places to shoot from and then shoot from that place an awful lot of times. Do you know that Cristiano Ronaldo, his conversion rate in the whole of his stint at Real Madrid was only 2% higher than the league average striker? The main difference was that he got into better positions,
But Callum Wilson, we always harp on about expected goals and expected assists and stuff. His numbers are incredibly impressive for like a Bournemouth side. I think last season it was like 0.7. I think this season it's like 0.7 again. And that is sort of the number of a player that should be making a move up. But then he's 27, he's had major knee problems in the past. Like you said, it's going to cost 50 million to get him out of Bournemouth. And I think Bournemouth is the right level. Like, if you're consistently smashing it for your club at Bournemouth, why are you going anywhere else? You're still competing for the top half of the Premier League. Do you see yourself as a starter in Champions League side if you're Callum Wilson? I think you probably prefer to be the star in Bournemouth side.
He doesn't get a lot of shots, but that's because of the way they play. He gets extremely high value shots, and in that sense, he's not dissimilar to a player like Aubameyang or Lacazette, who historically have not taken huge numbers of shots throughout their career. They're taking more this season, but they generally get extremely high value shots, and that's something he is really good at. Now, he does benefit from playing in a counter-attacking side right now, and they will tend to produce really high quality chances. But at the same time, I think that he's just always scored at a consistent rate, and it's a little bit sad that injuries mean that he will never get the move he probably deserves unless his contract runs out, which obviously Bournemouth are going to do everything they can to avoid. But again, just another. It's not really surprising. Like, I just expect to see Callum Wilson score every season because he's a really good goal scorer.
And it won't be long before he's no longer under the radar with the mainstream media. I think that he'll quickly be.
I don't think he's quite under the radar now, is he? Like that front three was championed last season by.
I guess when I say under the radar, I kind of mean more people don't consider him amongst sort of the top strikers in the league.
Okay.
Whereas his numbers potentially warrant that, given that he's playing in a slightly worse team and still putting up 0.7.
I think if you had Vardy's fitness, his numbers would be probably about the same as Vardy's. Like, expected goals-wise, they're extremely similar.
I reckon if you ask 50 people on the street who's better, Vardy or Wilson, 49 of them would say Vardy.
But I think that's fair enough, given that he does play more consistently. But I think, if they play the same, they generally have very similar numbers.
I think that'd be a pretty decent destination for him, Leicester, if Leicester are looking to replace 33-year-old Jamie Vardy with a 27-year-old Callum Wilson, and they had money to burn after the Maguire transfer. It's not the worst move. I just don't think, yes, he gets very high value shots, but Bournemouth have always had a very productive attack, haven't they? And in terms of taking a certain amount of shots per game, they've always ranked in, well, not always, but the last 3 or 4 seasons at the very least have ranked inside the top 10. So you'd think there's the opportunity there to definitely take more shots than he is. It's not like he's starved of the opportunity to shoot.
But the top 10 doesn't necessarily mean actually very good at taking shots. Normally the difference, we tend to see the top level take a lot of shots, and then really the difference is very small. So the bottom teams will tend to take maybe 10 shots a game, and then the team that's kind of like 7th in the league often takes about 13 or 14 shots a game. Like, that's not a very big difference between those sides.
And Josh King also takes up the mantle of a fair few shots as well going forward, because
Philip Billing as well, just been letting fly from everywhere this season.
Because
Phil Bill.
He's not playing as like the out-and-out lone striker. I know that Wilson kind of plays more reserved, but I think they share the shots a bit more, whereas when it's a striker like a Kane or an Aguero, then they are the sole man taking shots.
Yeah, which is kind of goes back to the point I was making earlier, that he's part of a good attacking system rather than being an outstanding attacker in an average side.
What about something like Everton? Like, I know that they signed Moise Kean this summer, and Richarlison is...
Have you brought this back to teams?
No, I mean where Callum Wilson, a destination for Callum Wilson and Everton, who I don't see as having that standout number 9. I think Richarlison was thought about potentially being the out-and-out forward, but has kind of faded more wide for them, and Calvert-Lewin gets a lot of minutes through the middle. Moise Kean's kind of rotated in and out.
Richarlison shoots like a forward though, as in like his shot numbers are much more like a forward. Like, as in, whether you play him wide, whether you play him through the middle, he's going to soak up a lot of your attacks, and his shot will be the end of the attack. And Moise Kean is obviously going to be a great signing for them. Like, I mean, those guys are still extremely young. Calvert-Lewin is still extremely young. Like, if I were Everton, I would not go out and waste the money on Callum Wilson when actually the place they're deepest is forward. Like, they've got there's great depth there to have those 3 players. They need to go and spend that money on a midfielder instead.
It's a really good point. All right, some other players then that we've got noted down here. Jorginho. Anybody want to take Jorginho as a potential candidate front of the radar?
The thing is about Jorginho, his numbers have actually been very consistent all along. They're very similar now to what they were last season. They've ticked up slightly defensively, probably in the absence of Conte. And they were pretty similar as well when he was at Napoli. Like 4.5 tackles and interceptions a game, I think, at Napoli. 4 last season, 5 this season. Passes have actually gotten down this year, but he obviously likes the fact he can get forward a bit more. However, I would say that Chelsea's weakness, such as it's been, has been attacked straight down the middle. Like, teams have been able to get through them down the middle and create high-value chances against them. They generally outshoot opponents by a lot, but the chances they give up are big. And to me, that makes it a little bit hard to praise Jorginho too much, because in the absence of Conte, that is a zone that he's meant to be patrolling.
Yeah. Although what I will say is he's spoken about in interviews, Frank Lampard allowing him to progress out of a specific zone. I think Sarri had him locked into sort of like a 30-yard area, didn't he, that he wasn't allowed to leave and just rotate the ball. So I wonder when Kante is back, whether Jorginho will be allowed to progress up the pitch a little more. Because I think that he's quite good around the edge of the area.
He's started to see it in his numbers already. And last season at Chelsea, he actually made the most passes into the final third, even from that slightly deeper position. His key passes have gone up. Like you said, his general passes have come down from around 80 to 60, but that's because not everything has to go through him.
Yeah, he's over a key passing game now.
In other means, I think it's like 1.2. And they're happy to kind of go a little bit more direct at times, I guess.
Yeah, I like Jorginho. I think when Kante comes back though, and they're playing some of the lower level sides, I wonder if Frank will look at it and go, do I need Kante and Jorginho in that side when I'm battering teams at home? Or whether he'll go, I could just play Kante slightly deeper and then play Mount and Barkley ahead of him.
I don't know. When you're playing downhill, Jorginho is exactly the guy I want. Like, because Jorginho can spray it around. Like when you're playing a team where you're going to have all the ball, that's actually a game I think where you can probably rest Kante. And you can play, say, Kovacic alongside Jorginho, because you're going to have enough of the ball, and Kovacic is mobile enough that you can mop things up. Plus, your fullbacks, you assume, are going to be a little bit more mobile once Emerson's back fit, once Reece James comes in, if he does come in. So, I don't know. I think that Jorginho is really, really useful in that sort of game. I'd actually say that Jorginho might be a little bit more of a problem in the bigger matches sometimes, where he's not particularly athletic. He is going to want to push forward. It's going to leave a lot for Conte to do.
With all that in mind, we talk about Rodri and we talk about Fabinho as being 2 of the leading players in that position in the league, and he has more ball recoveries. I think he's got twice as many interceptions, more through balls. He's obviously already registered an assist this campaign. So I think you're right in that we do need to put a little bit more respect on his name, and that when Chelsea struggle going in that transition from attack to defence, the numbers would suggest he's a critical component in keeping, level heads. Like he isn't you said they might have a little bit of a soft centre and they're conceding key shots, but he might not necessarily, be the problem. That might be down to system as opposed to his defensive nous, because he's as intelligent as the best deep line playmakers / defensive midfielders in the league, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you mentioned him there. Fabinho, I think, is not a bad shout. I think Fabinho is probably the best defensive midfielder in the world. Maybe Idrissa Gueye competing in that slot at the moment. Idrissa Gueye flying at PSG.
Yeah, I mean, Idrissa Gueye, Conte as well.
Slaying it at PSG, no?
It's extremely difficult to say. But I think generally if you're going to give players praise for things they do defensively, you've also got to criticise them when their team is doing bad things defensively. So if we're going to say, oh, it's amazing that he's got 5 tackles and interceptions per game and look at all his ball recoveries, we've also got to say, yeah, but these things aren't actually doing what they're meant to do, which is make the team better defensively, really.
But defensively, Chelsea have been inconsistent, haven't they, in terms of how they've lined up? So they've gone for a back 3, they've gone for a back 4, they've had to deploy Alonso, Azpilicueta. His numbers have spiralled downwards. They've had to bed in Tomori. Reece James has played right back. So I think you could actually say, on the flip side, maybe Jorginho defensively is just holding them together at the moment.
Yeah.
Which would be a little bit counterintuitive given that, like you said, Chelsea are conceding big shots down the middle, but might not be all him,
Yeah, just to take it back to Liverpool, because Liverpool fans always moan that we don't talk about Liverpool on this show.
Did I?
I think Joel Matip at the start of the season has just been fantastic. When he is out of the team and Lovren comes in, it is a massive drop-off now. And I think at one stage, kind of last season, you were like, it doesn't really matter who that Van Dijk partner is, because he'll do a lot of the work for him. Whereas Matip this season has stepped his level up so much. I think Doogie said on this week's Sunday Vibes Extra Time, which you can download now, by the way, link in the top of the description, that Matip has been sort of level, if not a little bit better than Van Dijk so far this season, which is a big statement, but even to be talked about at that level, I think shows like how flying he is. And everybody just talks about Van Dijk. Matip gets no praise in that back line. All the other 3 get talked about. Robertson, Trent,
Yeah,
Van
but you
Dijk.
expect that point to come where people start to go, oh, actually,
Hopefully.
is Van Dijk, have his numbers been padded out by, Matip, which will probably ensue in the coming months. But yeah, I think his distribution from centre half is probably unrivaled, maybe on a par with Harry Maguire, actually, in the Premier League. One thing I have noticed about him. Anyone else?
I think Liverpool's best player has been Firmino. Right? Firmino's been absolutely outrageous. Last season he was the guy that people didn't talk about at all in the Liverpool front 3, and this season I think he's been by far the best.
Sadio Mane has been the best player in that front 3 this season.
Sadio
Mane has been probably the best winger in the world so far this season.
I don't think. I'd say probably Sterling. I'd put up there, but I think if you look at Salah's numbers, they've ticked down from his first season. They've gone from 0.97 expected goals and assists per 90 to 0.82. They're now at 0.72. That's still obviously excellent, but it has gone down a bit. And his dribbles have gone down, and Mane's dribbles have gone down. So across the board, there's been a slight downturn in all numbers, except for Firmino, who's always been a good creator, who's always been a good presser, but his dribble is the highest they've ever been at Liverpool. Yeah. His shot's the highest they've ever been at Liverpool. He's just been so dangerous in every single regard this season, and it means that with Firmino, you have no idea what he's going to do. Sometimes he can drop off and essentially play as a link man in a kind of attacking midfield position. He's playing as a true 9 a lot of the time as well. He can pull out wide to allow Mane or Salah to go into the middle. He's just excellent at everything.
Do you think he's benefiting from that? I mean, it's an underdeveloped concept that we were listening, to people talk about at the Stats Bomb conference, but from Mo Salah's gravity, i.e., him pulling other players in this season, players keying on him. Do you think it's given him a little bit more freedom to operate around the box as opposed to kind of being that guy that drops deep to trigger play for the other 2?
I mean, I'm sure it's always a factor with Salah, though I would have expected it to be a bigger factor last season. If that was the case, I'd wonder why we didn't see this uptick last season, because that was following Salah's absolutely lights out campaign, and quite often we see a player have an amazing campaign and then a little downturn afterwards. We saw it with Sanchez and Hazard in the past. But I don't know, the problem with that attack is there's no real player you can key on. You can't afford to overcommit guys to Salah because Mane and Firmino are just as dangerous. So I don't know, Liverpool have kind of the perfect balance there in that everybody basically creates and takes shots pretty much equally. So there's no key man you can just mark out of the game.
And one of the most interesting stats that I read about Liverpool at the weekend was that they've allowed the fewest passes in their box in the Premier League this campaign. I think it's half that of Manchester City's even. So at Liverpool, the opposition isn't even getting past the back line. So we say that Van Dijk hasn't been as consistent this season. Jean Matip's numbers have been really good. And at the start of the season, people did highlight how much higher their line was and
highest it's ever been,
and how that invited a lot of maybe unwarranted, pressure. But yeah, the other team aren't even sieging that back line. And if the forward line are generating more chances than ever, well, Firmino in particular, do we need to credit that workman-like midfield a little bit more?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, given how consistent James Milner has been in there as well, and Gini Wijnaldum, who seems to have taken this game to a whole new level, even though Gini Wijnaldum statistically still looks like it's like run-of-the-mill central midfielder, but he's so crucial to that Liverpool team now. Like, you look at Naby Keita and you think, how does he get back in? How does Naby Keita get game time?
He needs to be consistently fit.
He's struggling a little bit behind the scenes. It must be Naby Keita.
Adam Lallana as well.
Well, Adam Lallana's going to leave. He's got 6 months left on his contract, hasn't he? I think I'd be very surprised if Liverpool renewed that contract.
They've just got depth there, though, haven't they?
Yeah, they've got loads of depth.
Everyone's like decent. Everyone's minimum decent in that midfield. Though, on the other hand, I mean, they haven't been as good defensively this season as they were last year. Like, there are no two ways about that. Like, they just simply haven't been. So, in a way, I'd rather give credit to another team whose defence has kind of improved. I think that we talk about Leicester quite a bit, but I feel like we don't really talk about their fullbacks all that much.
Ricardo Pereira.
And their fullbacks are absolutely sensational. I mean, Pereira obviously is much better in attack than Chilwell, but Chilwell is just reliable in every phase of play.
Pereira gets more tackles and interceptions by virtue of just being further forward, doesn't he? A lot of the time, Chilwell will kind of, tuck in. He won't be as advanced as Pereira. I think Pereira, who's it against? Where it's 8.1 tackles and interceptions.
Newcastle, was it?
Well, not 8.1.
Probably about against United.
Wouldn't have been 8.1, was it? That's more of an average than an actual in-game statistic. But yeah, I think it was against Newcastle or United, something ridiculous like that. But he's been consistently,
I guess,
brilliant.
For them though, for Leicester, because massive headlines about Pereira and Chilwell, in my opinion, and Soyuncu particularly for stepping in for Maguire, whereas Johnny Evans never gets talked about.
People have gone a bit overboard with Soyuncu, I think.
But Johnny Evans,
guilty.
Nobody ever really says anything about him because he's just there, reliable, never really makes any howlers, and has been a mainstay of that team now for what, 3 seasons?
I think I need to.
2 seasons, half it alongside Maguire, now alongside Soyuncu. So I think props to Johnny Evans for being able to maintain it under multiple managers as well.
And I've said it on Twitter before, one of the best Premier League purchases in the last 10 years for £3 million. I think he would be more than adequate cover for the top 5.
Yeah, Man United should never have sold Johnny Evans. He's up there with the terrible sales of like David Blind.
It's more difficult to play for those teams often than to play behind an elite defensive midfielder with elite fullbacks around you in a team that is more conservative. So, for instance, I remember when he was linked to City years ago, I don't think that would have made sense just because of the things you require of their fullbacks. Same goes for Arsenal.
Really? You don't think at this point in time he would be better stand-in than Otamendi, than Fernandinho at centre-half?
He's never played outside of a deep block. Like, he never really has played outside of a back four that has a lot of protection. Like, United ended up selling him because he didn't really fit the kind of system they were trying to play. He's never been particularly rangy. Like, I think he's a great defender, but I think he has to play in a particular style. And overall, you can then see why guys who are a little bit more athletic than him are going to get credit. Like, I think if you went to an Arsenal or a Spurs or a City, he'd have been very good when they were defending deep, but when they were trying to be a bit more expansive and he had to cover ground, that's not something you want Johnny Evans to do. You could play him in the middle of a back 3 and he'd be fantastic, but playing him in a back 2 in a team like that where they're expected to do so much ground covering, I don't know, we get into this idea where we think like a player is great and then they'll be great all the time. And I don't think that's the case for defenders. I think they're often really system dependent.
I agree in the sense that, they have to be tailor-made for the system. But I would disagree in the sense that he can adapt his game to be a very functional player. Top side, it's 31 maybe?
Yeah, he's in his 30s.
But his distribution's very sound. Like, Brendan Rodgers plays a much higher line than Puel. There's an awful lot more instances where he has to be the last man than probably ever before in his career, particularly under Rodgers, because Soyuncu is always the one that is stepping out. He's the aggressive ball winner, and Johnny Evans is the last line of defence. And it's not been noticeable, like his lack of pace or lack of athleticism.
But I think he actually is very rarely the last defender. Like he's normally the guy behind the line, but he's almost never exposed. Like you see the fullbacks and you see Ndidi covering in front of him. It's extremely rare to see him kind of facing a defender one-on-one in the open field. And that's the thing we see all the time at teams like City.
You mean like higher up the pitch?
Well,
He's
anywhere.
certainly in a lot of one-on-one situations down that right-hand side when Ricardo Pereira is bombing up the pitch and gone on.
He almost always has cover from Ndidi and Pereira coming back. Like Pereira goes up a lot, but Pereira's back quite a bit as well because he's so fast. Like, I mean, it's extremely rare that you see him having to cover a lot of ground. And I just think, I really like Evans, but when I see guys like Pereira putting up huge numbers and Ndidi putting up huge numbers, and then when you watch Leicester, you do think, okay, well, there's a lot of protection that's going on here, and that it may be that's necessary rather than just something to praise in those players.
Any other players from these teams that are doing well?
Top sides.
Looking at, I'm also thinking like Burnley are going up the table. I think Ashley Barnes. There's a few other names.
Dan Burn at Brighton.
Dan Burn at Brighton.
On the left of the back
As
three.
is Lewis Dunk, just consistently putting up strong performances, isn't he?
Pascal Gross as well continues to be one of the best ball progressors in the league. A huge creator, even if you take out set pieces. He's just been fantastic for them.
Yeah, at Wolves, I think Adama Traore has kind of matured a little bit this season.
Though everyone else has kind of taken a step back this year.
Yeah, except for Jimenez. Jimenez, not a
Jimenez
step
has
back,
been
but
good.
he's like flatlined as he is a solid centre forward, Jimenez, and they're probably right to pay that sort of mid-30s for him in the summer, given that some of the other teams are desperate for strikers now. But Adama
and making
Traore,
it stick is becoming increasingly important at Wolves.
and I just think that Adama Traore right wing back role is really interesting for him, and I think the Nuno Espirito Santo has worked miracles to get him to be able to perform in there. Because if you'd have said when he was like first at Barcelona or where did he go, Middlesbrough was it? He'd be playing as a wing back. I think people would have laughed you out of the room because he was just a headless chicken that could dribble.
I mean, his output's already surpassed several of his seasons in a starting XI. I think only Middlesbrough. I think he might have got
Insane
around 8
dribbles,
assists
yeah, he got a bunch of assists,
one
yeah.
season, But apart from that, his numbers have been extremely limited creatively and defensively. So that kind of hybrid role is probably one of the few roles he can exist in at the top level.
And what it allows Nuno to do is, obviously his teams are all focused on defence with the ability to just spring counter-attacks, hit the ball into Jimenez, who's going to hold it up, and then you're going to get Jota running off him. And with Adama as a right wing-back, his pace is so frightening that he is both a right wing-back and a right winger in one role in 5 seconds. Like, he's part of a back deep block, and then suddenly he's on the halfway line. And it also allows him to, without having to use all 3 substitutions, shift players mid-game, as we saw against Manchester City when he put Adama up front alongside Jimenez without having to make a substitution into that role. And that just puts City 10 yards further back immediately, because how do you cope with his pace and his dribbling? So I think Adama Traore.
I mean, on the subject of City, you could go Riyad Mahrez. So, I mean, this season, easy to overlook the start he's had, because Aguero has 8 goals, 2 assists, because KDB has 2 goals, 8 assists. David Silva's chipped in with a bunch of goal and assists in what's supposed to be, the season he's transitioned out. And Riyad Mahrez, last season, people were questioning whether he was ever going to be a Pep sort of player. I mean, 16 goal contributions in 33, I think, League and Champions League starts is a pretty healthy return for that given that adaptation period. I think his expected goals and assists was around 0.8. But you could caveat that with any attacker in City is likely to put up sort of supercharged numbers. However, this year, his output does suggest that Pep has finally got to him and has reprogrammed him, so to speak. So I think his shots are down, because before he would take shots from most positions, wouldn't he? His dribbles have gone up, and I think he's creating the second most chances in the City team after KDB. So he's already had an extremely good start. And at this rate, Sane is probably going to struggle to get back in the side if he's still in full flight when he returns.
Or if he just joins Bayern Munich straight away.
That is
seems like it
also
could be a
that,
possibility. Just a couple more players. John Mcginn. I love John Mcginn, but Pat will argue that hasn't really gone under the radar. A lot of people have spoken about John Mcginn, so I won't touch on him too long. And then some of the Sheffield United defensive unit. because I think they've conceded, 7 goals, 8 goals this season?
But it's so hard to like
second best in the
identify individuals. It's like
Yeah.
trying to identify an individual in Burnley's back line. Like the back line's
I think
just really
Ender
good.
Stevens and Jack O'Connell have been particularly impressive.
Yeah.
Obviously, Dean Henderson continues to be great away on loan from Manchester United. Other than that one howler against Liverpool, has been probably one of Sheffield United's better performers. Any other names you want to throw in there? I think we've covered off a bloody lot
Who
in that period.
plays in midfield for Sheffield United?
Couldn't tell you.
Norwood.
Norwood.
It's
Oliver
not Norwood.
Norwood.
It's the other one.
No, I don't know.
No,
I think it is Norwood.
his
There's two
name
Norwoods.
sounds slightly
James Norwood.
Scandinavian. No, I was hoping his name would come to me. It's not. But yeah, I think Sheffield United. If we're talking about teams, like to have conceded 7 goals at this point, and to be pretty productive going forward as well. When everyone thought they were going to be, because of their adventurous nature, they were going to be okay going forward and kind of
Terrible
sloppy at the back.
yeah.
They've adapted well to life in the Premier League, haven't they? So to kind of round that off, round the question off.
Yeah.
Back to teams: United, Sheffield United, Palace.
Sheffield United,
And those
Palace,
players.
and Burnley. Right, anyway, if you've got any suggestions for players that have been flying under the radar in the Premier League, why don't you let us know in the comments below. Moving on now to quickfire questions. The first of our quickfire questions was sent in by Scrambler, and he says, how do Manchester United beat Liverpool today? Obviously referring to the massive game this afternoon against Liverpool at Old Trafford. I don't think they do. It's pretty much impossible if you're Man United.
By not being totally
No Pogba,
in attack.
no De Gea, Wan-Bissaka a doubt, Martial unlikely to start, Luke Shaw not fit.
Do you know if you take away set pieces, only 3 teams have created fewer chances from open play than Manchester United, and I think it's the likes of Crystal Palace, possibly Burnley, maybe Newcastle, but don't quote me. Martial has to return. Is Pogba injured indefinitely?
Pogba, he's broken his toe,
Oh,
so I think he's unlikely to play this one. He's probably back next week. He has already been out for 3 weeks, I think.
so are we looking at a McTominay and Fred double pivot?
Not sure how the midfield rolls. There's no Pogba. Obviously, that's likely to be a McTominay, Matic, I'd imagine, against Liverpool. McTominay, Matic, Fred. I don't really know how he lines up. I mean, it's so unfortunate with injuries. It's coming to this big game. And recently, to be honest, no De Gea, no goalkeeper, no starting fullbacks, no starting central midfielder, no starting striker. I think he'll probably go for experience. Like Mata will probably play in this one, I think, in that attacking midfield role.
And against Newcastle at 10, he was not good.
He hasn't been good for a year and a half.
Like, he doesn't even play 10. He was like hogging the left-hand side, and you were like, okay, is he going to double up with Daniel James here? And they just didn't get anything going
I think
together.
Daniel James is also a doubt with that head injury out against
wow.
Wales for Wales.
So you haven't even got that kind of pace on the counter.
Well, he'll be a doubt. And obviously Jesse Lingard's also injured. So I really don't know
This could
who
be an
plays.
absolute butchering,
I don't
mate.
know who plays.
So you're basically playing like 9 and then Rashford.
Well, I think it'll be like Romero, Ashley Young, Maguire and Lindelof are probably likely to play again, and Tuanzebe at left back,
That's
similar
fine.
to that
That's
sort
fine.
of Arsenal one.
I like
Very
Tuanzebe
athletic.
at centre-half. Like, at least he's quite a brave passer, along with Maguire. They're effectively like your deep-lying playmakers in the absence of any adventurous
But he's
passing
gonna have
from
to play,
Fred or
He's going to
McTominay.
have to play at full-back, I think, at the weekend.
Tuanzebe, yeah.
Yeah, just because we don't have the depth, similar
He
to
was
how we
pretty
do
decent
against
there
Arsenal.
against- he was pretty decent there against
And then I would imagine he goes McTominay, Matic,
Yeah.
Fred, and then probably Pereira, Dan James if he's fit, and Rashford.
Bloody hell.
You've been unlucky at the start of this season. Well, increasingly, you were unlucky at the start and you've been bad since.
Yeah.
I think, only 2 goals from 6 expected goals in the opening sort of 4 fixtures. I think it's been downhill
So how do
from then.
But how do we see the game going? Liverpool.
Oh, your
just
defence,
all out.
your
just
defence
straight
is
from the
still
back.
decent.
Exactly. Your defence is fine.
Yeah, but not
I mean-
necessarily without both of our fullbacks and goalkeeper.
Yeah, though you've played games without your fullback so far, and still the defence has been pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
the defence didn't give up a lot against like Newcastle. Really, it didn't give up a lot
Shouldn't,
against.
no.
Sure, but like it's, I don't know.
We're playing Liverpool though, not Newcastle.
You are
and
at home
trouble.
though, and that does make a difference. But yeah, I think you'll lose.
Yeah, I also think we're going to lose.
So the question is, how do they win?
and
Have you got any
Luck.
very, very tough
How
to win,
isn't it?
how would you line up? Because
Well,
you looked very good on.
there's nobody fit, so I haven't
Yeah.
really got a choice. You just go deep block and hope to hit him with Rashford and Dan James's pace on the counter. That's the only way you stand and getting a result here, because we haven't even got
That's
the
probably how you
progression
do
in
it, even
midfield.
if you had everyone.
We haven't even got Pogba to
Exactly,
progress and
yeah.
create chances, have we? So you just got to go into Rashford and get him to beat a man.
But no one's springing the counter because you just haven't got good passes at the base of midfield.
And do you know what?
You've got guys who are good at pressuring and harrying and getting weird, shots in and around the box.
But do you know what? We've also got to take our chances from set pieces. The Maguire header against Newcastle from 3 yards out has to hit the net.
Yeah,
The
it's true.
McTominay header against you from 5 yards out has to hit the net. So if we take chances from set pieces, that's where we're fairly dangerous.
Yeah.
With the likes of, we've got quite a big team on the weekend.
I do
Given it
think
to
this
Inzaghi, McTominay, Maguire, Lindelof are all going to play.
God, yeah.
Matic is going to play. So it's a big team.
This is the thing about, like, when you take out the set pieces from United's attack, like, I do think they were reliant on penalties early in the season, but actually it does seem like you're doing quite, well, I was going to say interesting things, but actually you hit it at Maguire.
No,
and see what
we've
happens.
literally copied England's World Cup strategy of lining in a direct line with Maguire at the back post and a floated ball that Maguire heads back across goal.
This is starting to sound very Jose as well, mate. Like a really sound defence, not a very productive.
Yeah.
He didn't put sound defensive numbers in his last year at United, did he? But like a big team, a reliance on this physicality.
That's not a reliance. We haven't got a choice.
Yeah, I suppose
Yeah,
you
fair
can't be too critical.
There's nobody else to
of
play.
Solskjaer
There's
in it.
literally nobody else to
In this
play
case,
on the
can you?
weekend. Who is it? Brandon Williams
Play
to
some
get a game.
youngsters, man. Why not?
Greenwood potentially get minutes.
I thought he's injured as well, isn't he?
Potentially. I don't know. I've lost count the number of injuries. But either way, let's get a prediction. Score prediction on the weekend?
2-0.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a mauling like a lot of people anticipate because your defence is pretty sound. But I just think you'll offer very little going forward. So maybe, did you say 2-0?
Yeah.
3-1.
3-0 Man United. I'm going very optimistic. 3-0 Rashford hat-trick. It's going to be probably like 2-1. Virgil van Dijk winner, guaranteed. Right, let's
It's
get...
amazing that you think you'll score.
Well, I've just got a feeling, the same way that like when we played against them last year, when Rashford hit him on the break, he turned Trent Alexander-Arnold inside out and smashed it at the bottom corner. It's like, he hasn't done that since.
And they're not like impervious to harm. Like against Chelsea, I thought they were comfortably
the likes of
second best.
Norwich. I remember Norwich creating chance against them
Norwich
early
were really
doors in the
good against
season.
them,
So
yeah.
I think they can.
Yeah.
be got-
Chelsea should have beaten them.
From the chances you've created an open play, you've actually been pretty decisive. It's just you don't create any of them.
Yeah,
I think
none.
it's from like 7 expected goals, it's like 6.2 you've scored.
State of that. Okay, Blue Kangaroo 10. Who's the best manager outside the top 6? Well,
I
what's
really
the
like
top
Pep.
6?
Yeah, what is the top 6?
I really like Pellegrini, I think Pellegrini is a great manager.
Brendan Rodgers, I suppose, is
Rodgers
the
is a
obvious
good
shout,
manager.
isn't it? Although he is in the top 6. So
And he's got the best team.
What about best
outside
in the bottom
top
10?
six.
What's the bottom 10? Is Man United
Yeah.
in there? Yes.
I mean, Potter's clearly good.
Hodgson.
And
Roy
Chris-
Hodgson is a good manager.
He is. He's the only
At
thing
that
that
level,
keeps.
yeah.
And Chris Wilder's good. Chris Wilder's clearly good.
Does Eddie Howe count in that Bournemouth bottom 10? I might be top 10. Bit of an harsh question, isn't it? Given that there's no real classic 6 anymore, is there? It's just a mishmash of rubbish below a top 2.
Generally speaking, the calibre of manager in the league is really, really good.
Yeah, it's amazing. Best it's ever been. This one was sent in by Free Anns. Which individual season by any player did you enjoy watching the most?
Individual season.
I'll go straight in with
Go
that
on.
Cristiano Ronaldo 42 goal season when he was just winning games single-handedly for Manchester United. I think that was 09-10. Maybe it was 08-09, one of those two seasons around 2009, where he just it went from like a really good player to immediately one of the top 3 players in the world, won the Ballon d'Or. Just unplayable that year. Absolutely unplayable.
I'm really enjoying Arthur. Every time I catch him playing for Barcelona at the moment, he started the season really, really well. But in terms of what historical seasons, when Rooney was in his pomp, when he had his 30
2009-10, that was, yeah.
what goal season, like there's very few players that were satisfying to watch as Rooney when he was
Bullying them.
really bullying players. I mean Thierry Henry for one of the 5 seasons he scored over 20 goals. Aguero and Kane recently, like. I'm trying to.
Luis Suarez in that Liverpool
Yeah.
season was
14.
really.
He was
I really
unbelievable.
remember.
Well, you
that
guys are
one
probably best placed to
iconically.
answer this, aren't you? Because you picked the team of the decade.
Yeah, we did. We did pick the team of the decade, which is very controversial.
Yeah, but I feel like then there are so many before that. Yeah, like Ronaldo or like Henry 04, 05, 24 goals, 20 assists in the league. That's absolutely obscene. I actually think, and also we only did Premier League. I'd probably put Di Maria 13-14 in there as well, the year they won La Decima. I thought he was I thought he was the best player in the world for about 6 months of that year. He was incredible.
What about the year when Messi scored 92?
Yeah,
every single
2012.
time.
Yeah, that was
not
good.
too bad. Any other shouts, or should we move on to personal question?
Yeah, shocking that no one said Messi there at all.
I know.
You just-
Personal question then. I've got a few noted down here. Tom Golazzo, if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Teleportation.
Obviously, there's only one answer, it's mind control.
What that? You know when Jessica Jones came out and what was his name? David. Who's the actor? Tennant had that power where he was like he can make anyone do what he wants.
He had crap mind control though, because he only could do it if you were in breathing distance.
But that was a proper sinister power. That was a good power as a thinker.
You could use that to trump any superpower, because you could be like, I can fly, by the way, and then you'd just be like, oh yeah, you can fly. So if you thought I can fly, technically I can fly.
Yeah, but it's also like the most immoral one. Like if you have the power to fly, you can fly and enjoy flying. Whereas if you have mind control, you can't really use it without being an absolute piece of.
I can get somebody to fly for me. Fly me around. Private jet.
Yes, exactly. Well done. Slavery is what you've discovered.
No, I haven't.
You've discovered slavery.
Yeah, I might pay him.
I might pay him.
But then you're not using mind control. Then you're just hiring a man.
Walk up to any opposition team, just be like, yeah, you're all going to lose today. Make sure you lose.
Again.
Unreal.
That's like match fixing.
I could stop wars.
Oh my god.
I could walk into Al Qaeda and go, lads, guns down, please.
Okay, I'll give you that. That's good. Yeah, you could do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, and
So you
who cares about a bit of match
Not that
fixing?
anyone really talks about Al Qaeda anymore.
Yeah.
That you're like, ISIS. We need to go back to Al Qaeda. Let's deal with those.
If Joe's stopping, niche terrorist groups now, then
I can do anything with mind control. Mind control's unbeatable as a superpower. Better than strength.
Yeah, better than strength
is the
to
worst.
be sure.
what's the worst one?
What about immortality? That's pretty good.
Super strength's the worst one.
It's not the worst one.
It is.
It's
What
not
do you
the
do
worst.
Who's
with
the
it?
worst superhero?
You're basically a digger.
Who's the worst superhero?
Batman. He's just rich.
Hulk.
Superman. He's a little.
What?
Superman's great. He can
Nah,
fly.
he's too clean. He's a little bit.
The Flash
Yeah,
is a
but
bit
he,
rubbish.
yeah, but his
Like, maybe
powers are
Captain
good.
America are a bit vanilla, aren't they? Just bore off
Flash
with
is
your
a bit
virtuous
rubbish.
Yeah, but
bollocks.
Captain America's just fit. That's all he is. He's just like
He's just
he's just
thinking
in
of-
good shape. Like he's just really strong and fast. You're like, it's
Are
not
you
that
thinking of
great.
the actor now? What's his name?
Chris
Evans.
Chris
Evans.
Evans, yeah. It's Chris
Hemsworth is Thor.
Thor. Okay, so what's your superpower? I'm saying mind control. He's saying
Teleportation. Saves so much time, bro.
Terrible idea.
It's great. So good. Also,
Because
I
then
can get as
Pato
much
doesn't
money
have
as
to
I want.
commute, and then he doesn't come in stomping his feet when someone's not taking the bag off on the tube.
Yeah.
And he'd be so much happier on a day-to-day basis.
Go on, what would
No,
yours
as if
be?
I'd come here. As if I could teleport, I'd go wherever I wanted. You think I'd come?
You'd
I'd
come-
in.
you'd come crawling back.
If you could teleport, you could just go bang
Into bank.
straight into a bank.
Exactly.
Bop.
Yeah,
Get
exactly.
all
What's
that
the
out.
film? What's the with Christian? What the one was Anakin Skywalker? Jumper.
Jumper. Yeah.
In Jumper. That is that film all over.
Go on holiday whenever you want. It's great. Save so much money on flights.
I don't know.
You've got to pick one. You must have a superpower in mind. Never thought of this question before.
Normal human sight.
Yeah,
That'd be good.
Supervision. X-ray vision. Now, what's the best? Who's the best X-Men?
Oh Jesus
Oh
Christ.
my god. The X-Men are the worst. Why
What
have
do
you
you
gone to the X-Men? Wolverine, a bit of metal in his hand.
Yeah, they are the worst.
Imagine going through airport detectives as
What do
Wolverine.
you mean? Logan's a great film. Flying. Why not?
Flying. So there we have it. Either way, thanks very much for submitting your questions for this week's show. If you want to be involved next week, you can submit them in the comments below, or just send it to, it's usually Hamill that puts it out on Twitter on like Tuesday,
Yeah, sort of.
Wednesday, something like that. If you haven't downloaded the podcast, me, Pat and Doogie did our Premier League Team of the Decade, which means we're going to take a whole lot of shit to download that by clicking the link at the top of the description. And there is Football Social today that you're hosting.
Yes, me, Vooch, Harry Pinheiro, Doogie,
Yes.
Will Brazier. If the lineup's changed, it's changed, but there, we've gone with it.
Yeah,
So.
it's roughly that lineup for the Man United versus Liverpool game, so make sure you tune in to Football Daily for that one. Thanks very much for watching. Auf Wiedersehen.